A reading from the Acts of the Apostles. After several days had passed, King Agrippa and Bernice arrived at Caesarea to welcome Festus. Since they were staying there several days, Festus laid Paul's case before the king, saying, "There is a man here who was left in prison by Felix. When I was in Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews informed me about him and asked for a sentence against him. I told them that it was not the custom of the Romans to hand over anyone before the accused had met the accusers face to face and had been given an opportunity to make a defense against the charge. So when they met here, I lost no time, but on the next day took my seat on the tribunal and ordered the man to be brought. When the accusers stood up, they did not charge him with any crimes that I was expecting. Instead, they had certain points of disagreement with him about their own religion and about a certain Jesus who had died, but whom Paul asserted to be alive. Since I was at a loss how to investigate these questions, I asked whether he wished to go to Jerusalem to be tried there on these charges. But when Paul had appealed to be kept in custody for the decision of His Imperial Majesty, I ordered him to be held until I could send him to the emperor." Well, there's a lot going on here. This is a classic Law and Order episode of biblical proportions played out before us. Here we have before us the trial of Paul, and this trial seems a bit unfair. Now, this seems very much familiar than it is, because Paul's fair trial seems almost very similar to what Jesus experienced in his trial before his crucifixion. Now, we are ending our study of the Acts of the Apostles during our Easter season, and we have been noticing for many weeks the similarities of Jesus's ministry versus what the apostles take on and what they experience, and how very similar both ministries and how both paths seem to be taken. Now, of course, the apostles are continuing the work that Jesus did, so this is only natural. But we see here, very similar fashion, Paul being on trial, and a very unjust trial, if you will, similar to what Jesus had experienced. Now, it feels like they're really trying to stall. They're delaying the inevitable here. Festus and Agrippa both know that Paul is innocent. There's really nothing there that has been brought to them as hard proof to charge Paul and to find him guilty. But because of their political standing, they don't want to disturb that. They don't want to mess with their current political standing. They have high positions of power and they want to keep those, and they don't know what to do with Paul. They really don't. There's nothing. They just hear disagreements about religion and disagreements about this person they hear about called Jesus Christ, who they heard was dead, but Paul said is alive. They don't know what to do with Paul. Now, it seems in our context, we find similar situations where many of our own political leaders, maybe they had good intentions at first, but it seems like their number one priority is making sure that they keep their positions of power. And we see this here in this story. We have a lot of characters too. We have Felix, we've got Agrippa, we've got Festus, we've got Bernice. But as everything circles around this trial, Festus and Agrippa represent this leadership. It represents this age-old leadership. And it seems that this age-old leadership does not know what to do when encountered with strong issues of faith. And so it might even seem on the surface as well that they're trying to give Paul a fair trial by offering him to meet his accusers face to face before anything happens, being tried in Jerusalem. These things sound like they're doing Paul a favor, but in actuality, It's all part of this stalling tactic because they don't know what to do with Paul. And we see here that Paul is actually being steadfast. His head is forward and he's, standing upright, and, he doesn't want to go anywhere else, and he just wants to talk to the emperor. He wants to continue to plead his case as he's making his case, and he's making his case for Christianity. This story is showing us injustice. Is it more important to keep our own positions, our own hierarchy? Is it important for us to hold on to power rather than take care of somebody who's innocent, rather than taking care of the needs of another human being? This is all on display for us here in this story, and 2,000 years later, we're still seeing it. So, despite what may be going on, we know nothing here is brand new, and this has been going on for many, many years. So recognize the injustice, and let's strive to be a little more like Paul in this particular situation and be steadfast in our faith in what we believe. Let us walk forward with our heads held high when we are accused, and be able to continue to profess the faith. Let us avoid the temptation of power and privilege and holding on to that, just as Agrippa and Festus are doing in this situation. Amen.